How's it going? Can everybody hear me? I'm doing a mic test. I want to make sure everybody can hear. If you guys can hear me, just let me know in the little text box, somebody, and we'll get started. Sweet. All right. Hi. I'm Mike LaValle, and I will be walking you through the A.R.E to 4.0 to 5.0. And basically what I'm going to do is walk through a presentation and just bring up some major points that I've noticed. Go through basically what the deal is with the 5.0, what's happening with it, when you need to know certain things about it, and then I'll open it up for questions and answers pretty much at the end. So I really do want to keep this to about an hour. So apologies for if you can hear the little band behind me. There's a festivities going on across the street. So hope that's distracting, but here we go. All right, well, first off, welcome to Workshop Wednesdays, brief and informative sessions to help evolve your architectural career. Really how this came about was a partnership with Evolving Architect, which is the site that I run, the blog that I run, and the AIA Buffalo, Western New York Emerging Professionals, which is a group that I've been involved with for many years now. And really what I wanted to do was kind of bring some of these things that have been taught as seminars before and just do sort of a very quick but informative session on a regular basis. I think what we're trying to do right now is plan basically to do one of these webinars. This is the first one, which is why there's probably going to be some technical fun happening here. But basically, what I would like to do is run one of these pretty much every last Wednesday for the foreseeable future, just to kind of get something out there every month. Sometimes it'll be about A.R.E, sometimes it'll be about portfolios or resumes or other career-related things, maybe software, things like that. But this time, it's all about the A.R.E transition from 4.0 to 5.0. I'm Mike LaValle. If some of you don't know me, I think I know some of you from either already being subscribers to Evolving Architect or people I just know in the community. But if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, I am an architect and lead accredited professional. I'm currently the secretary of the AIA Buffalo, Western New York chapter, and basically I got my license last September, and I've been trying to help other people do the same since then and before then as well. So I think I'd just like to start by saying, you're in the right place if you're just starting to take or thinking about taking your exams, you want to know more about A.R.E 5.0 and how it will affect you, or maybe you're just awesome and you want to be even more so. So I hope that this is an informative little session, but here we go. So the 4.0, the A.R.E 4.0 is, for anybody who's not aware, is broken into 7 distinct pieces. And I think half of the exam really is more of the technical nature with structural systems, building systems, and building design and construction systems. Those being the more technical exams. Schematic design is sort of in the middle, where it's just a drawing exercise, and then the other ones are more related to the practice, the programming, planning and practice, site planning and design, and construction documents and services, all sort of relate to that half. So it's very sort of nice and neat and orderly, and each of the 7 pieces you can sort of study as their own component. But as with everything, things change, and I think that the thing to remember here is that at the end of the day, NCARB is only teaching you the things, or is only testing you on the things that they feel like you need to understand in order to practice on your own as an architect, registered or licensed or what have you. So what happened basically was, and this happens on a generally regular basis now, every couple of years they'll kind of talk to themselves and sit down and figure out sort of what the next steps are. So in 2013, the NCARB board votes to change the A.R.E to the next version. The 4.0 has been around for a while now. It's been, a little bit tired, and I think a lot of people have had heavy criticism on how good it is to test your actual ability to be an architect. So I think one of the things that they reacted to was, we need to change this. Let's try to figure out a way to do that. So the general timeline that you would probably want to consider is, the first thing that NCARB did, really the major thing, was they released their transition calculator, which last year it basically took the, you could kind of figure out if you had already taken some of the exams, which from 4.0 would carry over the best to 5.0. And it's a very cool little thing that you can go on NCARB's site still and sort of play around with and figure out. But I think after you hear what I'm about to say, you might not even really need to do that, because you'll kind of have a good feeling of whether you're going to take the 4.0 or finish the 4.0 or just wait for the 5.0 to come out. So February 2016, they released all the new item types and the exam policies, which I'll go over a little bit in the middle. In summer 2016, the study materials and final exam details will be released. So for anybody who's familiar with the 4.0 study guides that are free on NCARB's website that help you prepare to take the exams, the equivalent of that is going to come out pretty soon. I mean, it should be out probably in August, if not September, based on this November 1st, 2016, which is the launch of 5.0. On June 30th, 2018, A.R.E 4.0 is retired. So those are two both really important dates to know. I'll get into it a little bit later as well, but basically the reason why November 1st is so important is because if you do not start taking 4.0 at all before that date, you have to take 5.0. You don't have the choice. You have to you can't get grandfathered into the rest of 4.0 and take them through the 2018. You have to actually just go on to 5.0. You don't have any options. So that's why the topic today is 4.0 to 5.0, because it's giving you time to at least figure out what you wanted to do. So one of the things that I'll go through a little bit here is frequently asked questions and sort of break down what that means, because I think a lot of people have just general questions. The one comment I have is that NCARB is particularly good with how they're better now, but there still are a lot of confusing questions that people want the answers to. So the first one that I think of is, why is the division structure different from 4.0? And I think it's pretty much going back to the same thing that I mentioned before, where they felt that the version now is a little bit tired, a little bit dated, and it needed to be revamped. It needed to be sort of brought up to the standards of how architects actually learn, or at least how NCARB thinks that architects learn and how they work. So what the actual breakdown is, as I said before, there's the 7 pieces of 4.0, and then there's the 6 pieces on the right here of 5.0. And I think the thing to note here is that, they've taken one exam away, but they've distributed all of those other pieces across all 6 of the exams. We'll get into a little bit later how those are actually distributed, but the important thing to know is one of the major things that they did was they basically have solidified and kind of collected all of the test information and distributed it so that it's not like the best way to explain it is if you study for 4.0 construction documents, you're studying for a very specific exam. And although there's construction documents things all through 4.0, it's mostly that exam where you'll tackle those sorts of issues. Whereas with 5.0, you could see a much more varied sort of distribution where the construction documents isn't just obviously in one or another, but it's in 2 or 3. So it becomes a little bit harder to test for the 5.0 in terms of the nice, neat sort of package that the 4.0 exams came in is a little bit different than 5.0. But the thing I want to stress is that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's harder. It's a different way to study. So one of the things I think you should think about while I go over these things is consider how you best study. Is there a way that you study better? Would you rather deal with less exams? Because, literally you could I'll show you a way to take 5 exams rather than even 6 or 7 later, but you have to sort of work the system a little bit in order to make that happen. Is that the way you want to do it and just get it done, or would you rather just pace yourself and maybe even take all the A.R.E. 4.0 still? So going over each of the 5.0 sections, practice management, there's 80 questions, 3.5 hours long, and what I've done here is just sort of very quickly articulated which of the 4.0 sections relate to this. So this exam in particular is about practice, and it's about all of the things that you would need to do when you're managing your own practice. So that's why it relates a lot to the CDs and the programming and practice, because it's taking those sort of business-like things that you would relate to your firm and the firm operation and putting those into an exam, but it's taking from multiple exams like I mentioned before. So now if we go to project management, this is more about how and you can see the distribution of approximately the percentages of things, of more of managing an actual project. So the other one was about managing your business and getting clients and things like that. This is more about how do you deal with the contractual obligations and things related to how you deal with a project overall. If you just read these pieces, contracts, execution, quality control, all things that are still a little bit, they're taken from the CDs and the PPP exams. But the thing, again, to the fact that these are blurring the lines. They're not as clear ways necessarily to understand how to actually study for the exam. If we go to programming and analysis, this is really more about I think this is probably much heavier in the site planning and the programming side, because this to me is more like the exam you would take to understand the preliminary ways to, and like the things that would affect how you would lay out your overall building envelope and how you would place it on a site and things like that. So it's blending those 2 exams together, but I think when we get into the next one, you'll see just how much things really do get blended. So this is one of the 2 exams to watch out for 5.0 specifically, especially if you're considering doing a little bit of a 4.0 and a 5.0, which you can do if you're already taking the 4.0 or you're about to take the 4.0. You could take a couple exams and then take a couple exams from 5.0 and end up only actually taking 5 exams. And I'll show you how later, but this is one of those key exams because it hits a lot of the other things that you need to pass in order to, for NCARB to clear you as, being qualified to have your license. So this is really, it's taking from, if you look at that list of 5 sections, that's a lot to take in. You're taking in site, you're taking in schematic, building design, structural systems, building systems, all of the technical things just crammed together with site. It's a 5-hour exam, which, at 120 questions for 5 hours, these things are going to get a little bit crazy, particularly because you're going to need to pace yourself with the multiple choice now a lot more than you would if you took the 4.0. The 4.0 has the drawing vignettes, and it has the added bonus of there's a break between the multiple choice and the drawing vignettes that you're tested on. Whereas I don't know necessarily if they haven't really said it. I don't think if there's been a break. I don't think there is. You just get the 5 hours for the whole duration as an example for this one. But 120 questions could be a little bit daunting. Now, the same thing, 120 questions. For context, I think the highest amount of questions on the 4.0 is 125, I believe, for structural systems. The next highest is 100 for, can't remember exactly which one off the top of my head, but again, the 120 questions could be pretty daunting, especially if they're giving you 5 hours to do this. It's not going to just be your run-of-the-mill multiple choice questions. And I'll show you some of those other types in just a moment. But look again, all of those technical exams, and this is, again, why you can get the 5.0 credit, because the 4.0 exams that you're supposed to take are more of the non-technical ones. So you take the non-technical ones, you take these 2 exams here that are the more technical ones, and it captures all of the credit that you need to qualify for your license. Construction and evaluation, this is a fairly straightforward construction administration exam, and this, CDs is popping up again as another exam for 5.0. But just to give you a taste of sort of what these exams are all about, I think the other thing that you may not have noticed, but some of the people here who have taken 1 or 2 of the 4.0 will notice, is that if we go back through some of these, the thing that I really like about the 4.0 is that it's a very clear way, especially when you're studying with somebody, to say CDS or SPD or site or structural or building systems, whereas with the 5.0, and this is just a very minor thing, but it's getting a little bit muddier just in terms of trying to keep these titles straight, just so that you're, project management, practice management, programming and analysis, project planning and design, project development and documentation. It just gets a little bit cumbersome. Not that that should really sway you in which exam you pick, but it just seems like one of the things that NCARB might have missed a little bit on. Will there still be graphic vignettes on the exam? No, there are no vignettes on this exam. The thing here is what they did was they basically took the vignettes, and because everybody was really frustrated with the fact that it felt like you were playing this horrible video game that nobody ever should play ever, and that you had to sort of beat the system in order to win. In my opinion, some of the vignettes aren't even really testing you on things that you need to know as an architect necessarily. They're things that you just need to memorize the information on how to pass the vignette, and you pass it. It's not necessarily something that you had to go to architecture school or work in an office to understand. You just need to beat the system. So I think that's one of the reasons why they took them out of there. But instead, they have 3 new types of vignettes, or not vignettes, of question types, but they're all still they're not all still multiple choice questions, but they're all still things that will show up in that multiple choice sort of interface. The first one is drag and place. This is an interesting one because it's not multiple choice, but I kind of like it because it tests people on whether or not they have a really good understanding of what they're looking at. Some people might disagree, but I think that knowing how to assemble the wall section and physically having to move these pieces across the screen to fill in that drawing on the right is actually really important to know. And I think this is one of the positive steps for NCARB, where you actually feel like you're doing something in the right way, where metal framing goes to a certain place, the sheathing goes to a certain place, rigid insulation goes to a certain place. All that stuff works together and you get something that makes sense. So, sorry, just go back to that real quick. So the way that they grade this is if you assemble the pieces into that wall section the correct way, then you get a point. It's important to know that all of these questions are all worth the same amount of points, 1. So each question is 1 point, and as you're going through these, it's the same sort of way you would test for any of the 4.0 exams. You just, if you don't know what the answer is, at least you should try putting something there. I know that NCARB has actually come out and said that you might not use all these pieces. It's not necessarily always going to be a wall section, but it could be something else where you have to assemble something or put something together, like a detail or something like that. And you might not use all the pieces. You might use the pieces more than once. I think it's just going to depend on what that question is really asking of you, but just something to be aware. They're all weighted equally. The other one that's really interesting is the hotspot. So if you can tell, I don't know if you can see the red cross that's sort of in the the middle upper portion of this diagram, but there's like a red cross with like a larger yellow cross coming out of it. And basically the question was asking for this diagram, I don't have the question on the screen, but where should the flashing go? And if you were going to put this in the wall construction, that's approximately where it would go. And what NCARB is trying to test you on is, do you know generally where something's supposed to go, whether it's in a wall section or, again, another detail? It's a very similar way to test you in your active knowledge on like the drag and place, but it's testing you in a slightly different way. Basically what there is there's a zone on the screen where, as long as you put that cursor there, it will allow you to it'll give you the point. Like, you don't have to have it be the absolute dead on perfect place, because I think what it wants you to do, the computer and NCARB wants you to really just understand what they're asking you in the question, and they're trying to test you in a way that is not just, here's an arrow, which one is it? They want you to actively be engaged in answering the question. So the center of the red cross is the point the computer will calculate. If you can imagine sort of a zone on the page, as long as it hits that zone, you get the point. Again, it's only 1 point, so as long as you guess on these, if you have no idea, you could have a shot at getting it. The most complicated, still, each of these questions that are sort of subpart of this count as 1 point, but the thing that sort of replaces, in my mind, the vignettes are the case studies. Now, the reason why this is important to know is that NCARB has said that there might be more than one case study per exam. The case studies are supposed to be sort of at the end of the exam, and they should have multiple questions. So you could have up to a pretty big percentage, I think, of the questions, up to like 10 or 15, somebody said, I think. And really what this is if you can see the sort of tabs that are in this case study, they're the site plan, program elements, geotechnical report, zoning ordinance, all these tabs. Basically what they're doing is just like the vignettes, they're giving you tabs and sheets of information. And it's your job to decipher all the information, sort of look at the questions, and then go through all of the tabs and sort of interpolate the answers from all the information they're giving you. They're giving you all the information you need based on the case study at hand. And each one of the questions, you can see next to the case study 1 title, it says question 1 of 5. So each one of those 5 questions counts for 1 point. They're equally weighted to the multiple choice, to the drag and place, and to the hotspots. The thing that's important about this is that you can basically just go through this like a series of multiple choice questions. The benefit could be that as long as you're comfortable with going through these kinds of documents, which honestly you should be probably, because it's testing you not only on how you get the information, but it's testing you on what kinds of information you've seen before. Like if you've done a lot of code reviews, you'll probably understand right away what's in the codes and regulations tab. If you've ever seen a geotechnical report before, you'll be more familiar with that tab. So it's NCARB's finally testing you in a way where you're actually in a way where you probably practice anyway, because you're, as an architect, you're always looking at references, you're always looking at documentation to sort of give you the information you need to make the decisions in your design and in your projects. So I think that this is actually a really good new alternative to the vignettes, especially because you have all the 2 other types of questions. This could be a really good thing moving forward for NCARB because the sort of video game-ness of the vignettes is gone. So just to recap sort of what we just went over, there's multiple choice questions like there always have been. From what the people at NCARB have said, they will be basically the same pool for the most part of questions that are in the 4.0, but they'll be redistributed across all those 5.0 pieces. And on top of that, they'll add these other kinds of questions in there. And you'll get, whatever it was, the 120 questions for this exam, 80 for this exam, and so on. And the distribution will be like what we went over just a few moments ago. But the one thing to know is there will always be a case study. No matter what the distribution is of the other questions, there will always be at least one case study on each of these exams, which is important to know because, you'll get to the end and this will be the last thing you'll see. They definitely said that they wanted this to be the last portion, so it, once you're done with this, you're sort of done. But just like the multiple choice portions before, you can sort of switch between this and the other multiple choice at will. So is A.R.E 5.0 going to be harder? I would say in general, again, it depends on your study style. Would you rather study distinctly for a structural exam, or would you rather study for an exam that sort of takes from the way you practice architecture? And in my mind, it just comes down to which kind of person you are. You could be the kind of person who really enjoys breaking things into separate pieces, and you have the opportunity still to sort of grandfather yourself into the 4.0 if you want to. And then when the 5.0 transition happens, at least you'll still have the options. The one thing to take away here today is that the transition, when it happens, again, you have to take 5.0 after that point. Will it cost more? I think that this is sort of an interesting question. NCARB a few years ago had to raise the prices because somebody disclosed a whole bunch of information that was on the exam specifically. And that led to a lot of sort of problems in their question database. They couldn't just keep using the same questions, I guess, if somebody already had distributed a whole bunch of information about them and all that. So that was the reason why that price increased. I think what they've said is that the prices will stay the same per exam until 2018. So when the 5.0, excuse me, releases, it will cost $210 per exam. And it's in front of me, I think it is $235. Yep, $235 after June 2018. So once 4.0 goes away, they are going to raise the price. So it'll be $235 per exam. The thing is, though, with that, it's still technically cheaper to take the 5.0 exams than it is to take the 7 of the 4.0. Not a lot more. I think this is all sort of generally the same cost. So it might not sway you, but it could. If you're currently testing, should you wait for the launch of 5.0? I've been telling people since this has been a little bit more elaborated upon by A.R.E that if it was me and I was in this situation again, I would definitely take just if it's working for you, I guess that's the question. If it's working for you, you should finish out 4.0. I know that a lot of people aren't necessarily taking them in the order that they need to sort of get the parity between 4 and 5. So it might be interesting to just, or it might be in your best interest just to take the rest of the 4.0 outright, or it could be a good idea to at least take the 4.0 ones that matter in the sort of the parity that you can get from 5.0. And then when you get to that section, you can choose then. I really don't think you should wait, though, if you have the opportunity now to take at least one of the 4.0 exams, to take them and get yourself into the system where you can, again, grandfather yourself into the 4.0. Will the time it takes to find out my test results change? When I originally started taking my exams a couple of years ago, basically I had up to a couple weeks to wait for stuff, and it was really tough. I mean, I would take an exam and I would just be sort of paralyzed. I couldn't even study for the next exam, and I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but it really, you just want to know right away. The thing that I would say is that just because the things are all multiple choice-ish based now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find out right away. Like if anybody's taken the lead exam before, you know that you get the exam literally after you are done with the exam, because it's all just multiple choice, straight up multiple choice, and it calculates in the computer, and that's fine. But because they have those sort of drawing portions, they still need to take it away for a day or two to analyze the results, I guess, just to make sure. And I think that's sort of what they did with the vignettes for the 4.0, is a physical person actually has to look at your results and confirm whether or not you passed. So this is the same idea. Really all this means is that it's going to take another, say, day or two than it would from getting it immediately. But that for a lot of people right now are getting them, still a week or two away. This is going to dramatically change and decrease that time it will take. So I think this is a good thing. So here's the thing. The way that the 4.0 and the 5.0 shake out, this is it. These are the exams that you need to take in order to get that sort of parity. So like I said before, if you look at the left side, the A.R.E 4.0 divisions are CDs, programming, planning and practice, site planning and design, building design and construction systems, structural systems, building systems, schematic design. So that's all 4.0. The 5.0 that we went over are the 6 exams, and you can sort of see how these little pie pieces and the colors are distributed across So if there's a color that shows up from the 5.0, that means that there's a portion of the 4.0 is on that exam. So the reason why you can take 5 exams rather than 6 or 7 is because the construction documents and services, the PPP and the SPD, sort of, if you track the red dashes along the horizontal, those capture all those little dots. The other 2 exams, which are the heavily technical exams, capture the rest of them. So in a way, you've already qualified to be a registered architect or a licensed architect if you just pass those 5 exams. And that's why, if you've heard a lot of people talking about the 5 exams versus the 6 or 7, that's what they mean. They mean that you literally can just take 5 rather than the 6 or 7, because you're capturing all of the qualifications that you need, and that's how you do it. So if you were going to take the 4.0, you would want to take these 3 and then wait till 5.0 comes out and then take the 5.0. Now, here's the thing. If you just take one of those and pass it, you can still take those 3 and then transfer over to 5.0 even after it's passed. It's not like you have to pass all 3 of these before November 1st. You just have to pass one of them before November 1st, and then you'll get grandfathered into the 4.0, and you'll have the option to eventually transfer over to 5. Now, the thing with that is that once you make the transfer and you click the button on the website to turn to 5, even if you pass the other exams from the 4, you can't go back. So it's a one-way ticket. You have to finish it out on 5.0. So you can either finish it until, you have until June of 2018 in the 4.0, or you could choose to go this 5-test path. Again, the problem is that there's not necessarily going to be the same kinds of material ready right away for studying. Not everybody's going to know how easy or difficult these exams really are. They could be pretty brutal, especially because of how many exams they're trying to cram into each of these. And it's something you just have to weigh. So I think the best way to do this is just to at least take one of the 4.0 before November 1st and have your options. If we look at the way that everybody's pretty familiar, I think, with IDP, the IDP just recently changed to the AXP, and really what the reason was for that. I think this is the thing that really impresses me with NCARB, is that they made the transition from not just the way that their exam was structured to make it more relatable to practice, but they also turned their experience progress tracking into the same type of system. So on the left, you'll see the way the IDP was, and then you'll see the 6 categories on the top in the colors and how they get redistributed, how all your experience points get redistributed to those 6 categories. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you haven't realized this yet, I thought this was really, really great. The 6 categories for AXP are the same categories for A.R.E. 5.0. This is huge, I think, especially for people who really do deal a lot with their experience. I know that some firms take it very seriously, and some firms don't necessarily take it as seriously. But in terms of people trying to get their experience and do it in a way that's feeding their knowledge so that they can take that exam that relates to it, I think is really smart. So if there's anything that I like really about this whole transition, this is the one slide that I think really speaks to that. It just feels very smart, and NCARB is known for making some weird decisions. So I think this is a good push forward. So what can I do right now to prepare for A.R.E. 5.0? Well, I think you need to make a personal decision and sort of figure out what, based on the stuff that I sort of presented just now, what is it that you think you can do? What is your situation? I know that it's going to be fairly different for everybody. I don't know if you guys are having like, I guess just to, let's just actually use this texting piece here on the site. How can everybody just tell me either, I guess one of a couple things. Are you either currently testing? Are you thinking about testing? Or are you pretty sure you're going to wait until 5.0? I think I'd really appreciate it if you guys could just kind of give me a little bit of feedback here in the text. And maybe we can see a little bit about who the people are here that, what are you guys doing, and how are you guys doing? Let's see how that goes. What I would just say is, okay, so thinking about testing, waiting, okay. So, I think waiting for 5 is perfectly fine. I think especially if you haven't taken any of these, I mean, it's still the same exam, it's still the same content. It's just shuffled around a different way. And, I think you gotta just, again, do whatever is best for you, because at the end of the day, you have to pass this exam, and that's, I'm not going to pass this exam for you. You got to pass this exam. So whatever the best way is for you, I think you should do that. I think the thing that's interesting to me is a lot of people have been saying that they're going to just wait for 5.0. So I think it could be the right move, especially since we don't necessarily know what we won't know for a couple months, especially until after people have started testing, like how the tests are. But I think you could do it a whole bunch of different ways, either the 4.0 track, 4 and 5, or 5 by itself. So I think just to finish off here a little bit before we get into questions, when the A.R.E 5.0 arrives, just don't get left behind. You don't want to get stuck. If you're doing 4.0 right now, you don't want to get stuck not knowing kind of what to expect in 5. The thing I would say is, if you have access to materials for 4.0, they are still going to be perfectly valid for the 5.0 exam, especially since, to the best of my knowledge, I wouldn't expect to see, aside from maybe Kaplan, or the really big distributors of content, I wouldn't expect to necessarily see anything for 5.0 until at least next year. So if you're planning on doing this in the next couple months, I think just be careful that you are studying the content that the test really wants you to get tested on, and just, you have a lot of resources probably, and if you don't, I think there's some ways that I can help. One of the things that I've done here on the Evolving Architect site is I have basically created the 7 sort of intro guides for the 4.0 exams. And what I'm planning to, these are basically, if anybody hasn't seen them, they're basically, they're all free. They come with, just subscribing to the Evolving Architect newsletter. And there's 7 of them, 1 for each of the 4.0 pieces. And really what they are is, I don't think that the NCARB intro guides do quite a good job of explaining what sort of resources you might want to look at and what to expect on the vignettes and things like that specifically. And each of these goes over the exams and their sort of nuances and just my sort of thoughts on each of them. What I'm planning on doing in the fairly near future is to do the same thing for the 5.0. So I guess just look out for that. And what I'd like to say is, thanks everybody for listening to this part. I'd definitely like to have some Q&A happen here, but again, this is brought to you by the AIA Buffalo, Western New York chapter, Emerging Professionals and Evolving Architect, and I hope that you got something out of it so far. So the one thing I would say is what I was planning on doing. Maybe you guys could give me some feedback in the in either the chat, or there's a survey at the bottom of the website. If you guys wouldn't mind just filling that out real quick, just so that I can kind of get a sense of, excuse me, get a sense of what you thought went well or what you'd like to have me improve on, because I think I'll be doing these for, like I said, for a while. But what I'd like to do for the next one is I mentioned that those 4.0 exams would be really important to the transition period. The thought was to do a summary of all of those three and in one workshop, and just sort of give you guys feedback on each one of those if that's something that interests you. So I guess that's it for me. Again, I really appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to me sort of yammer on about the 4.0 and the 5.0. But if there's other questions or things like that, would you mind asking them in the chat? Otherwise, there's a button here for if you guys are interested in sort of, this is one of the new things I'm trying, but primarily I've been writing for the last about year, and there's a lot of other things. This page is on my website, so if you have a moment, maybe take a look around, see if you haven't been here before. I write articles once a week, and from everything about A.R.E. to career building and all that stuff. So, well, I hope everybody, like I said, enjoyed this. And if you wouldn't mind, this is all for you guys, all for anybody who's interested in listening. But if you wouldn't mind, giving me some feedback, I really, really appreciate it. And that's about it. I think I'll take a look here. Let's see if there's any questions. Study types. Okay, so will the strategy be the same? I would say that not sure if you should weight based on study types. I mean, per exam, the way you would actually study for each of these would be very much. I guess the thing I'd be worried about is, think about this for a second. I'll take structures because it's the easiest one to think about right now in this context. If you're studying for structures, you're only getting the study materials for structures. You're getting the lateral forces books. You're getting the earthquake books. You're getting things based on general structures. That is very, very specific, whereas the problem might be, especially because Kaplan and Ballast or PPI haven't come out with very specific texts yet, it might be all over the place, and you might be scrounging all over to find every little bit of information. And honestly, depending on how they roll this out, you might be studying more for some of those more compact exams or condensed exams, because you're taking the information from all of those pieces. But they could literally ask you a question about anything, and if questions that are more structurally based come up on one exam, on the same exam that you would really be focusing on, mechanical systems or plumbing systems, that could be really difficult to study because you're studying for basically everything all at the same time for the technical aspect. So that's why I say that it might be easier to, just take the one piece at a time and focus on that, and then, pass that and, keep moving. That's the only reason why I liked the way that the 4.0 was structured. It's structured more akin to the way you would study in college, where you're taking a class and you have a very specific purpose and you take the exams and you just get it done. The other way is, you might be finding that it takes you twice or three times as long to study for the one exam because you have no idea what to study for. It's hard enough to study for the structures exam in the first place, but to study for that and the building systems and the other stuff at the same time could be problematic. That's all I really mean by that. The 5-test path, I think, is viable. The thing about that is that those are, in my opinion, the construction documents and services, the site planning and design, and the programming, planning, and practice are all, they're I don't want to say they're the easier exams of 4.0, but they're potentially the more relatable or easier to study for, because they don't necessarily rely on, they're almost like, the thing that's sort of, I guess, sad to say about them is you could kind of not know as much about them at all and study for them and still pass them. Whereas I think some of the other exams you kind of need to, it really does help to have the experience behind them for the more technical pieces. So it also depends on your experience. If you're a person who is just thinking about starting, but you haven't had a lot of work experience in an office, I think 5.0 might be more difficult for you than the 4.0. But if you have had a lot of experience, or you've had enough experience, maybe a couple of years, you could get by and it could be fine. So, I think it really does depend person to person, but that's why I would suggest maybe focusing on the 4, is a good option, especially if you don't know what you want to do, because I would rather that you take the 4.0, one of the exams, and pass it, whether it's, any of the 3, and just get it done, and then not have to worry about whether or not you have to take 5.0 or not. Because if you get stuck in 5.0, you're stuck in 5.0. And, not that it's a horrible thing, but, you might not want to be in that position, and at least the 4.0 gives you options. So I don't know if there's any more questions, but I think those were some good ones. Again, I really appreciate everybody being here, and again, I hope this was pretty good. I think that I enjoyed myself a lot, and I hope that you did too. And I wish you good luck if there are no more questions on your exams. And again, if you guys need anything, or want to have another conversation after this, I'm more than happy to do that. I sent everybody emails today, so you can just respond directly to my email, and that'd be great. I'd love to talk. Well, thanks. Thanks, guys. I think that's it then. Really appreciate the feedback, and I don't think there's anything else. So one thing I will mention before you guys go is I am going to put this recording somewhere. I don't know exactly where yet, so I will email everybody who is here just sort of the link to this. So, again, thanks for your time and really appreciate it. Yep. So I just saw this this pop up. I am going to share the slides with everybody who came here. I guess the only thing I would ask is, let's see. Yep. So yeah, I'm going to share the slides to everybody who came here, and that should be it. I'll just I'll send that around as well. So the video will be up at some point, and I'll send out a link to that, and I'll send out a link with the where you can download this other package. So again, thank you for signing up, and thank you for being here.